Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bantamweight Boxing YouTube channel. Crazy news dropping in the boxing world today. I thought I was only going to make one video, but news has just dropped and I was like, I've got to cover this, got to give my 2 pence. So Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn could be in jeopardy. Now, if you haven't already heard, Conor Benn has tested positive for a banned substance. Now, this is all very confusing. The whole process they do with the drug testing is it's not made easy to follow, but I'll try and break it down and kind of explain. So basically, before this fight, both Conor Benn and Eubank agreed to obviously be tested by UKAD, which is what the Boxing Board of Control listened to. But they also agreed to be tested by a voluntary kind of testing party. Now, the voluntary testing party doesn't have direct control or isn't listened to directly by the Boxing Board of Control. So they can advise, but as long as they pass the UKAD test, the fight can technically go ahead. Now, the UKAD test came back for both the fighters and it was fine. But this voluntary test has come back with a failing on Conor Benn's side. So he is tested positive for a substance called clemifilm, I believe. I've probably butchered that name, but it's basically a female fertility drug. Helps women, if they're struggling to have a child, it helps in that sense, I think by producing eggs or something. But it's also proven to have kind of other effects which are performance enhancing. I think what people are saying online at the moment is the big effect it has is basically boosting testosterone, which is obviously directly linked, one of the main things you can use to enhance your performance. There's a lot of talk about what the drug could be used for. That's the kind of main thing I've heard from just Googling and looking online, but people have also said it could be like a masking agent for other drugs or whatever. But essentially, it's going to make you faster, it's going to make you stronger or whatever. Now, this is pretty heartbreaking news. So the first A sample of this voluntary test has come out with this. But as always in boxing, nothing can be decided until we see the B sample. Now, if you follow boxing, the B sample usually has a kind of issue of going missing, it never happened or whatever. And they need the B sample to come back as also positive for this substance in order to really kind of prosecute Benn or move forward with it, because the first sample could have been tainted. We haven't yet found out about what's going on with the B sample. That in itself is very dodgy, because if you think they've got the A sample coming back as that, they would get the B sample back immediately and test that. But we haven't heard about that. Strange. Now, obviously this is just shit news, isn't it? Because the fight is a couple of days away, and it now really is in jeopardy. But there's a lot to discuss about it. First of all, what are the fighters saying? Now, they've come out pretty quickly. Conor Benn, obviously Conor Benn's still happy to fight, but the main person we're hearing the response from is Eubank. He's apparently spoken to Conor Benn directly, and also himself has kind of publicly, basically said out in the open, he's happy for the fights to still go ahead, despite, these samples coming out. Eddie Hearn and all of that have all said the fight is still going ahead until there's more information on it. But technically, because they haven't failed the UKAD, there's no reason to officially call it off. Now, what are my thoughts on this? Now, at the end of the day, they're both fighters, right? And they're both getting paid a lot of money for this one night of boxing. We're talking a couple of million here, right? Their biggest paydays for both of them probably ever. And they may never make this much, never had this opportunity to make this money again. So Eubank saying he wants to go ahead with the fight is, props to him for being so brave. But at the end of the day, he's always going to say that because there's a lot of money on the line. He's under pressure from a lot of fighters, a lot of people in the fight game, who also have got their money on the line, who are going to be like, mate, just go ahead with it. Go ahead. It'll be fine. So should we listen to the boxers and their opinions? Obviously, we need to take that into account, how they feel. But in my view, what's right should override what the boxers want to do. If someone has failed and has been caught positive with a substance which is banned by VADA, an official substance, there's not a grey area, it's official substance which is banned in boxing, performance enhancing drug, the fight should be pulled, full stop. Because here we're talking about boxing, we're talking about a sport where two people are going in the ring to hurt each other. As some people have said, it's not a 100-meter sprint, right? The worst that's going to happen if someone cheats, and that is, they've cheated and they've won and they've hurt someone's pride or whatever, or damaged someone's career. But physically, there's a very low chance of someone getting injured as a result of someone testing positive. In boxing, Eubank Senior has seen the effects of what boxing can do to opponents, and as a result, I believe, if this B sample comes back, which it probably won't, but if it doesn't come back, then I think the fight should be pulled, because that's dodgy in itself. And if it does come back positive, it should be pulled, of course. But Eubank himself, as I said, Senior, has seen the effects that boxing can have on people. And it's also quite interesting is that he was so vocal about this fight, about not wanting it to happen very early on. Not saying because of the potential drug cheating, but he did mention about Eubank, the effects of Eubank coming down. And there was just a kind of weirdness about the fight, of his lack of involvement. And he's usually now a kind of character who is really laughed at on social media, but it's come to show that maybe he was speaking some sense and we should have really listened to him. So yeah, for that reason, I do think it should be pulled. If we look at how hard a lot of Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, etc., came down on someone like what's his name, Baby Miller, who was meant to fight AJ and then tested positive. The fight was pulled straight away because of the effects, and everyone came down on him, like a bag of bricks, which they should have done. And so why is there any difference here with Conor Benn? But yeah, it's very worrying. It's dodgy as hell, isn't it? And am I surprised? Well, yeah, of course I'm surprised. No one was expecting this so close to the fight. But then you look at it, Conor Benn was fighting at welterweight and was moving up to essentially middleweight. You don't do that in a matter of 6 months or whatever it was, naturally. There's dodgy stuff going on there to physically do that, to do it correctly. Now, Eubank said he only needed 60% to beat Conor Benn. Well, Conor Benn is going to be at 200% if this is all true. So really shocking news. There's a lot more to come out about it. I'm feeding off drips and drabs of information, but we'll see what happens. Do you think the fight should go ahead? Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, thanks for listening. It's been banterweight.